Poll question today was closer to the truth about the Canucks. Hot streak or they're really good? We're going to put it to our next guest, rink-wide, Jeff Paterson, our Canucks reporter, who took in the 2-buzz win over Dallas on Saturday. Jeff, how are you?
I'm good. I had a night at the rink on Saturday. Had dinner with Frankie Corrado, who was in town for that Canucks Autism Network event, and kudos to everybody that put on. It looked like a great weekend, a ton of fun for beer leaguers and rec hockey players to rub shoulders with NHL alums, and Frankie was in town to take part in that, but wanted to see the Canucks up front and in person for himself, because the Canucks are in Toronto at the end of this week. He said he was going to be working that one on radio, so I think he was impressed like most people were. And I have to say, guys, and I wrote about this in my column at Canucks Army on Sunday, it was just so nice to have that big game feel back at Rogers Arena. And I know it was game 11. Trust me, I get it. It's game 11. But the Stars came in at 7-1-1. The Canucks were 7-2-1. It felt like they were sort of feeling each other out in that first period. There have been so few big games at Rogers Arena over the last decade that I got to thinking that really, when you look at the core group of Vancouver Canucks, and I'm talking about Demko, Hughes, Paterson, Miller, Besser, I would argue that game on Saturday may have had the most heft of any game that quintet has played as members of the Vancouver Canucks at Rogers Arena. Of course, they played in the bubble, and that was playoff hockey with nobody in the stands and in a pandemic. But in terms of games on home ice, they just haven't played many big ones. So it was cool. It had a nice, it had that vibe to it. And let's hope that there are a whole bunch more here over the course of the season.
I'm glad you brought that up, because it was actually a discussion point at the Whitecaps last night. I think with a lot of people at the Lions game, they were getting reports about how big game feel Rogers Arena was for the first time in years and years and years. Answer me this, Jeff, because the last time they have earned points in 7 consecutive hockey games, you've got to go back to December 2021. And of course, the birth of Bruce, there it is, in a 7-game winning streak that took them through that month. Is it fun at the rink? Not just big game, but was the fun back at Rogers Arena?
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't end-to-end, goals galore like there was in San Jose, obviously, but there is an art to a chess match, and I kind of felt the first period was that, and then the Canucks took over, aided by a few power plays, but the shots were 12-1 at one point in the second period. The ice started to tilt, and they've been able to do that a lot here lately, and of course, they break the scoreless tie, and then what a play by Filip Hronek, set up Elias Pettersson, and that gave the Canucks a little bit of a cushion. Ian Cole with a thunderous hit on Matt Duchene, and that got the people into it as well. So certainly there were moments throughout that hockey game, and it just, again, in my mind, it harkened back, and we've been all around this team long enough to remember playoff hockey. And I just thought, imagine if this was the first of 6 or 7 straight against the same opponent. And that is the beauty of playoff hockey. Obviously, we're a long way from that. I get that. I want to be guarded. But for 3 hours on Saturday, at the very least, I dared to dream, fellas, that maybe, just maybe, there will be some postseason hockey at the Rog in the spring of 2024.
Well, that's about as well played a November game as you can get, to be honest. That was the day that saw the most goals in National Hockey League history ever scored in one day. And yet there they are playing a 2-0 game against the Stars. So it stood out like a sore thumb in a good way, of just a well-played, structured game. So it seems like hyperbole to say playoff hockey, but I think we have to commend both sides. And in this case, we'll stick with the Canucks. They played a structured game. And we've talked about adding structure, but it was, I think a lot of people viewed that on a sliding scale, Jeff, that, yeah, they've got more structure, but they still score a lot of goals, yada, yada. No, that was a fully structured game that they played. They're the kind of game that will win you contests in March and maybe in May.
Yeah, and Matt, you referenced the debut of Bruce, there it is. And of course, they got on that run, and what was sort of the constant then as it is right now, Thatcher Demko was one of the stars of the month for December when Bruce Boudreau took over, and he was good then. And he was great in the bubble, obviously. And that's kind of been, not the knock on Demko, but it's that he has shown us for a month here or a playoff stretch there. But people wanted to see him do it from day one right through the season. Well, he can't get to the end of the season without suiting up and playing the games. And so far, it's better than so far so good. I mean, he has been spectacular. Jake Ottinger, one of the great young goaltenders. That really was a souped up goaltending matchup the other night. And Ottinger was good, but he blinked and Demko didn't. And 2 shutouts already this season, and first time in his career that he's got to 2. So, I was curious, how are they going to follow up a loosey-goosey Harlem Globetrotter-esque 10-goal night in San Jose? And they were all business. They were locked in. And I think that's what I like, is that they've shown that they can score a bunch of goals and win sort of the high-flying games. They did it on opening night against the Oilers. They won 5-0 against St. Louis. But then here comes Dallas, and you know what you're going to get from the Dallas Stars, and the Canucks were able to beat the Stars at their own game. So, they're on a run right now, 6-0-1. The only blemish there was the overtime loss against the Rangers, and that was a fun game on a Saturday night as well. So they've played the Rangers hard. They beat the Dallas Stars. I think there's a lot to like in the fact that when they've measured themselves against some of these teams that are going to be there when the playoffs roll around, I think the Canucks can feel pretty solid and pretty proud of the way that they have performed in these early season tests.
And you mentioned Demko, Jeff. Some of us are a little surprised he got the San Jose game, because that maybe looked like a backup start, and then come back with them. I suspect come back with them against Edmonton. And DeSmith gets in one of the 2 Toronto or Montreal games on the weekend. How have you, what's been your assessment of the way they've handled the goaltenders here? And are we ready to see Thatcher Demko pick up more and more starts compared to the spot rest, the more frequent spot rest, I think we can all say that he got in October from Casey DeSmith?
Yeah, he got a Saturday start. How about that? And I imagine that he'll get another one in Toronto on the big stage and against the Leafs in the feature game on Hockey Night. But I think they've handled their goaltending duties perfectly, quite frankly. Now, remember Game 2 in Edmonton, the rematch after the 8-1 romp, and Demko left the home opener with an illness, so we weren't sure about Demko's availability then, but Casey DeSmith went in, performed, got the victory, did the same thing in Florida. I like the way that they gave DeSmith the Florida game and saved a rested Demko for a conference opponent in Nashville. They went in at the end of the trip, and they beat the Predators there. I was a little surprised because, I thought the San Jose game had Casey DeSmith written all over it, but at the same time, Thatcher Demko has started 3 straight right now for the first time all season. They've almost got through a month of the season, and he started 3 in a row. I'm with you. I think he gets this Oiler game coming off a shutout, because the last time he had a shutout was St. Louis. They played the next night, and that's when they went to Casey DeSmith. So there were reasons for that. But, conventional hockey wisdom is to get a shutout, you keep the net. So I think that's I think they're going to get on a bit of a run here now with Thatcher Demko. But the fact that they have sort of eased his workload in the first 3 or 4 weeks of the season allows them to ramp him up now to, I don't think anybody would be alarmed if he gets to 5 straight starts, if he plays against Edmonton and starts the road trip in Ottawa, get to Toronto, and then it's back-to-back on Sunday night, they're into Montreal. So I think DeSmith probably is earmarked for that Montreal game right now. If he played in Ottawa, wouldn't be shocked. But I think it's time. I mean, Thatcher Demko, again, is in such a groove right now. He just looks so poised and polished, and the economy of motion and the saves that he's making. And you look at his record on home ice, guys. He's 4-0. He's given up 3 goals in those 4 games already. He has 2 shutouts and has only given up 3 goals. It's incredible. I mean, and the strength of any good team in the National Hockey League is goaltending, and the Vancouver Canucks have it, certainly in their starter. And Casey DeSmith's been really good when he has been asked to get in there and shoulder the load.
Quinn Hughes was absolutely terrible by his standards. By most people's standards, it was spectacular still on Saturday. But by his standards, just kind of an average Quinn Hughes day. He actually looked a little bit out of sorts at times, just handling the puck. But I think the other 5 defensemen showed that they were all doing their job, didn't they? I mean, from Cole's thunderous hit to the fabulous pass by Roenick. Susie got a point, didn't he, as well? And then the other 2 were just kind of not screwing things up. Like Friedman and Myers are kind of just, they're fine. And that's all the Canucks are asking of them right now. So it was a night for the other defensemen to sort of show their wares.
Yeah, and look, if that's the off night for Quinn Hughes and they still were able to shut out an opponent, then hey, he's going to bounce back. He's electric. But you're right, he was fumbling the puck, and it did kind of feel like a guy that, we remark about his edge work all the time. It was noteworthy that his edge work seemed to fail him a couple times as well, blowing tires out there. So yeah, he wasn't at the very top of his game, and yet the Canucks still come through and pass that test with flying colors. But part of that is Philip Hronek logging huge minutes again, picks up yet another assist. He's on a 6-game point streak, kind of quietly, up to 11 helpers. And I looked at this on Sunday, that the Canucks have 2 defensemen, Hughes with 16 points and Hronek with 11. That is more points in 2 defensemen than 10 NHL teams have from their leading scorer at this stage of the season. I mean, there's just so many goofy stats around the Vancouver Canucks and their offense right now, but that jumped out at me when you've got two guys that play defense that have more points than the leading scorer on 10 other teams around the league. But yeah, Carson Soucy has sort of settled in, and you want him to just be quiet most nights, and I think that's the case. The Cole hit, I see Matt Duchene is out of the Dallas lineup, and that's unfortunate for him. You hope that it's nothing serious there, but boy, just on the receiving end of big time lowering the boom. And again, that got the crowd into it. It got the bench into it. Tocchet certainly alluded to it after the game as, a momentum moment in that hockey game. And then this is funny. I've got to go look this up, but somebody suggested on social, dare I say this, where's the wood to knock on here? But Tyler Myers has gone 5 games now without being on the ice for a goal against. So, when I say I just want it to be quiet around Carson Soucy, the same thing applies there to Tyler. Just keep it simple, limited mistakes. And then Mark Friedman has just settled in as well. And, other than the other night in San Jose when he was taking pucks to the face, you don't notice him an awful lot, but I say that as praise and sort of, more of what you want from sort of those bottom 3 guys. So the top 3 are going to do a lot of the heavy lifting for this hockey club. They have. And when you've got the great eraser like Thatcher Demko behind them right now, just not much getting into that Vancouver net.
Let me ask you our poll question then, Jeff. What's the truth about these Canucks? Hot start, or they're really good?
I think right now I would shade to really good. When you just look at sort of the backbone of this group, Demko, Hughes, Paterson, and I don't know if you guys saw that ESPN sort of awards watch article that was out earlier today. Like, it really was bizarro world stuff to read. I mean, it's all about the Vancouver Canucks, and this is taking samples from anonymous voters, people that are actually going to cast ballots at the end of the season. And for all the talk 2 weeks ago about nobody's paying attention to Quinn Hughes and nobody's watching the Vancouver Canucks, I mean, Hughes, the front runner for the Norris, Paterson getting Hart and Selke love, Demko, the Vezina, Tocchet, coach of the year. Like, it does sort of feel like the people that are going to vote at season's end are finally taking notice of what the Canucks star power is doing. So certainly with those guys going the way that they're going, JT Miller playing the way he's playing, Besser, on and on it goes. This doesn't feel like a hot streak. I mean, the structure that we all kind of laughed a little bit about down the stretch last year and through training camp, it's been ever present. There are a couple of nights where they've strayed from that system, but for the most part, haven't got too far away from it. And they're just not giving up the goals and the chances at anything close to the rate that they were a year ago. And so it does sort of feel, I mean, they're not going to shut out every opponent. I get that, but there does seem like there's a sustainability to the way that they are playing. And the other part is there's total buy-in. And I think that, success begets success. Like, these guys are digging this. And all those core guys that I mentioned, they haven't had much, if any, success in their time in Canuck colors. And so it feels long overdue. And I think they're loving it right now. And, prior to Saturday's game, Besser acknowledged the fact that these are the kind of games that, I want to play in because, quite frankly, I haven't played in many of them through his time in the Vancouver Canucks system. And so they're having fun. They're winning games. They're playing the right way for the most part. And I do think that they can keep this up. Again, the caution comes. They're not going to win every game. Just kind of feels like that right now.
So then the big question is, I mean, they're 6 points up on a playoff spot as we speak. Jeff, can they screw it up from here?
Well, injury certainly can. And I mean, but that's across the board for any team in the National Hockey League. If they can stay healthy, though, in the words of Jim Rutherford prior to the season there, if everything goes right, yeah. But I mean, there's reason to believe here in the short term, and Teddy Bluger is back skating now. We finally heard that over the weekend. And so he's going to go out on the road trip here at some point. You inject him. I mean, there's reason to believe, and it might take him a little while to get up to speed, with the way that this team's playing and the way that this game is going. But, he's going to step in and should be able to help this team. And so there's reason to believe that they could get a little bit better. Are they going to be completely healthy the rest of the year? No. So there will be other injuries along the way. But if their key guys stay healthy, then yeah, I mean, I think you put all these points in your basket early in the season, like that matters. And the other thing too, and this is crazy, but a chance to win the season series from the Edmonton Oilers on November the 6th. But beyond that, a win in regulation time, they will pull 14 points clear of the Oilers less than 4 weeks into the National Hockey League schedule. Like, that is just, it's hard to wrap your head around, but we know what the Canucks have done. We know the struggles of the Edmonton Oilers. The Canucks have been part of that with those 2 wins right off the bat. They get a third one here, and they take the season series. And Is that going to matter at the end?
Yeah.
No, but you want those tiebreakers, under your control.
Well,
so
well,
I
imagine
would
telling
argue
somebody.
it is because, we talked about it last week when they beat Nashville, Jeff, is you're in the Western Conference with all these teams. It's about eliminating these teams, and winning season series against them gets you closer to the end goal. So, I mean, to have 2 series wins potentially after tonight, one against a team that was as high as Edmonton last year, one that was in your neck of the woods against Nashville, is pretty heady stuff for a team that hasn't had a lot of positive headlines, particularly at this time of year for several years going.
Imagine telling somebody we've reduced the NHL schedule to 70 games, and we're also going to spot you a 14-point lead on the
It's
Edmonton
tantamount
Oilers.
to that.
Can you make the playoffs?
Absolutely.
I think people would say you can't.
Jeff, magnificent stuff. We'll be listening to Rink Wide's Monday, and look forward to speaking to you later in the week.
all right, guys. Thank you.
Finning Canada is your local dealer for cat equipment built to handle work in Western Canada. Visit finning.com for a location nearest you.